Okay, well, thanks for joining us for the last Wildcat Career Chat of the year. We have Jeremy Vore here with us today. He's a 2000 alum, and he's here to talk to us a little bit about what his major was and what he has done since graduation. So we'll jump right into it. Jeremy, so what was your major in college, and why did you choose that major?
Hi, Melissa. So I had a number of different majors throughout my 4 years at NMU. I started out as a biology major because, by golly, I was going to become a doctor because that's what I was supposed to do. And so I went into it with a bio major, and by the end of my freshman year, I was secondary ed with English and bio as my subject areas. And by the end of my sophomore year, I was an art and design major with an emphasis in photography, and ended up graduating with an art and design degree and minors in biology and English. Almost a minor in physics too, but that's a whole other story. So.
Nice. I'm a huge fan of art majors. So tell me a little bit about, why did you choose to go into photography?
Well, that's sort of a weird and odd story. I loved biology. I loved animals. I loved nature. I loved the outdoors. And so I thought that being a biologist, I would get to be outdoors, but it turns out I actually got to be in a lab, and I got to put salamanders in a blender and chop them up to find their pheromones. And that just wasn't what I had envisioned. And so by becoming a photo major, I got to go out, and my emphasis was photo, and my sub-emphasis was nature photography. And so I got to make a living for a good period of my life taking pictures of the things that I loved outdoors. And so rather than study them in a laboratory, I got to bring those things that were so important to me to other people that otherwise wouldn't get to experience them. So that's what led me to photography.
Nice. Okay, so what types of experiences did you have while you were in college that you felt were particularly valuable? Did you do any internships, or were you involved on campus?
I was extremely fortunate, especially in that biology career change opportunity there. I started out my freshman year as a freshman fellow. So I was part of a freshman fellowship program, and I got to work with Dr. Brent Graves, and I helped him do research. So I was out with his grad assistants, and I was involved in the research that he was doing to write papers. And as a freshman, and I think this is pretty unusual, as a freshman, I actually got to find out what it was like to be a research-based biologist, and found out that, unfortunately, it wasn't for me. But finding that out my freshman year really helped me reset my career path early on, which was great. That was a really good thing. So that was a really positive experience. It was a negative experience, but it was a positive experience, if that makes sense. Yep. And then when I became an art major, Dr. Dennis Staffney, who was my photography advisor, he set me up to be a lab monitor in the photography lab. And so I had free reign to play with all the chemicals. While I was working, I was printing and doing all this other stuff. And so, again, that opportunity to be set free outside of class hours in a laboratory, photo lab in a dark room in a photo studio was phenomenal. And it gave me the opportunity really early on to start working with other people and communicating and teaching and helping them, because as the lab monitor, people had questions about what developer do I use? What concentration do I use? How do I do this certain kind of print? And I got to help with those answers. And that was far more valuable than my actual class time, I think, in terms of being able to figure out those answers. So those are both really important things in my college experience that I wouldn't have gotten, I don't think, if I'd gone to other colleges, to be honest.
Nice. I like that. Okay, so tell me a little bit about what you're doing now. You have a couple of different things that you're working on.
I am. I'm a little bit diversified at the moment. So I have a consulting business, and that consulting business focuses on change management. So part of that is helping companies figure out what training they need to institute. Part of it is coming up with communication plans and change management plans. Essentially what I do is I come into large corporations and I help them with the human aspects of change. So they might have a new software system, they might have new processes, they might be going through a corporate merger, but I specialize in helping them make sure that the human elements of their business achieve change to accomplish business outcomes. So most of that is really just communication and training, but it's communication and training with business goals in mind, not just for the sake of communication and training. So that's one big chunk of my time. I also happen to be a kayak instructor, and I have been since I was 16 years old. That's a big reason I came to Northern, because we have very, very good paddling here. So I was a kayak instructor and still am, and then I also have a wood shop. So I do quite a bit of woodwork, and then there's a fourth thing too. I do voiceover work. This is my voiceover booth right there. So I do quite a bit of voiceover work as well. So I am quite diversified at the moment, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But the biggest reason is I'm interested in all of those things, and why not do them all? You know, I've been very fortunate. I can do them all, and I can structure my life around my work instead of structure my. Oh no, wait, I said that wrong. I structure my work around my life instead of having to structure my life around my work schedule. It's really quite nice to have that opportunity and to be that diversified. So,
sure. So with being this diversified, what's a typical week look like for you? Do you have a typical?
It depends on what I want and what my family wants, to be honest. So some weeks are almost all consulting. I take it, we need a fresh shot of serious income, and we have a trip we want to take, or there's something that we want to do that needs some money. So I'll spin up some of the consulting work because that pays the best. But it means that I'm in the office for 40, 50, 60 hours during the week. And sometimes that's a price that's worth paying in terms of my personal time so that we can accomplish something as a family. Other weeks, like this week, it's absolutely frigid cold out that window. It is like 2 degrees below zero, and it's already 10:40 in the morning, but it's still 2 below. And so I would much rather spend my week holed up in my wood shop with a fire burning, working on furniture. And so that's what I'm doing this week. So my weeks really vary, and personally, I need that. If I had the same thing every day, I would get bored and would not be a happy guy. So for me, having that variety is actually really important. And that's a reason that I do all the weird things that I do, so that my interests can be supported by my work rather than my work supporting my interests.
So the consulting that you do, is that something that you can do from home? You do that virtually, or do you go to these different organizations?
There's usually some travel involved, but it's certainly not full-time on site. Usually it's a kickoff meeting on site, then it's a few visits to make sure that I understand the corporate culture and how that company operates. But for the most part, it's virtual. In this day and age, we can do all sorts of things virtually. So I get to live in the wilds of the UP south of Marquette and have this job where I work with Fortune 500 companies, and I get to do some woodwork, and I get to go kayaking, and I get to do voiceovers for global companies all around the world.
Very cool. So what do you like best about what you do?
Part of it is the variety. The variety is a big part. Honestly, the other part is that I have an 8-year-old and I have a 3-year-old who's about to be 4. And they're only young once. And I really cherish the opportunity to say, it's an afternoon and it's beautiful outside. It's not today, but in the summertime, hey, we have a beautiful summer afternoon, and I can change what I'm doing and go spend the time with them. Mm-hmm. And I have to be careful about how I schedule my time, because when I am doing something that's heavy into consulting, I lose that flexibility. But when it's the woodworking and it's the voiceover and it's those things, those are very, very flexible in terms of schedule. So as an example, this July and August, we finished building a family canoe. We built a cedar strip canoe that's 18 and a half feet long, and it's perfect for family camping. And we had a great time at the very beginning of July going on a family camping trip in the canoe. So I basically took July and August off. I just stopped scheduling work. And we took a month and a half, 2 months off, and we just spent the summer canoe camping. And that's what I like about my job. I get that kind of flexibility.
Nice. That sounds pretty ideal.
It is. It really is.
What do you like least about what you're doing then?
Probably that flexibility, because what it means is that, and I swear I'm not trying to give you a cop-out answer, but what that means is that, if I'm in a job that is that flexible, I only have maybe 6 weeks of my pipeline filled in. In this case, I'm actually filled in through April, about half-time, about 20 hours per week of consulting through April, which is great. That's a pretty secure, stable stretch for me. But it means that I always have to be hustling and looking for that next thing. If we're talking about the voiceover work, I might get a couple of audiobooks that are going to be 15 or 20 hour productions, which, it's about 4 times that in order to actually produce the book. So I've got 2 weeks worth of work to do that audiobook. But when that audiobook is done, there's nothing on the schedule. And so I'm constantly having to hustle and find the next thing. And that's the hard part about doing 4 different things, having consulting and voiceover and woodwork and the kayak stuff. And honestly, the kayak stuff is more fun than it is, real income. But those other 3 things, I constantly have to be on the hustle in order to have a pipeline so that we have financial security. And I haven't really run into any issues doing that, but it's a constant thing that I have to look at.
Okay.
So that's the worst part, is that unsurety there.
What suggestions would you give to a student who was maybe thinking about doing something that was this flexible or
This flexible? Honestly, if you want to do something that's this flexible, I think that the keys to my success in all of those things are actually having good business sense, which I didn't go to school for. I was lucky my parents are business people, and so I was able to learn a lot from them. So having a good business sense and communicating well. If you can communicate well, you can parlay that into almost anything. So, and I don't necessarily know that means a communications degree. It could be education. It could be, there are lots of ways that we communicate. For me, communicating was art and design. Art and design was all about communication. Even though it was photography, it had to do with finding a message and figuring out how to convey that message properly. And if you're good at that, you can jump around and do all sorts of different things. Because the 4 things I do now are only 4 of about 10 other things that I've done. And most of those have been focused on communication and training and, being able to communicate ideas with people.
So going a little off script here, you talked a little about, you just mentioned that there were some other things that you had done before. What was the first thing you did when you were done with school, when you graduated?
So right after I was done with school, I immediately opened a photography business. In fact, one of the cool things about Northern is that I actually opened my photography business 2 years before I graduated. So I was in the photo program for a year, and I'd already started my professional photography business and was making money at it. In fact, Northern bought, I had the cover of the annual budget report, a bunch of other things. Northern bought quite a bit of work from me. So they helped support that right out of the gate, which was wonderful. So I spent 2 or 3 years doing photography. And that was awesome and it was fun, but it was a lifestyle. It wasn't a career. It was a lifestyle because I was constantly on the road. I was constantly working. It was not 40-hour weeks. It was, much more than that. And so I ended up becoming a pilot after that. I decided I wanted to fly. And so I moved to California, became a pilot, and I was a corporate pilot for a while, and flight instructor, and worked for an aircraft manufacturer. And then I became a corporate executive for a healthcare organization. I was their chief pilot for a bit. And they said, why don't we get you out of the cockpit and put you in our actual organization? I said, great. So I got out of the cockpit and did that for a bit. And so there's been a lot of jumping around. But all of that really comes back to the communication and the ability to have a good business head. Everything that I've done has been based on that. Even the flying stuff, because I was a flight instructor. I ran a corporate flight department, which means I was constantly communicating with mechanics and with the aircraft manufacturers and blah, blah, blah. And then when I worked for the aircraft manufacturer, I worked for Cirrus Design in Duluth, Minnesota. I was a flight standards pilot, which meant that I was creating checklists and creating training and doing company flight reviews with our sales pilots and with our demo pilots. And all of that was based on communications and training, all of that. No matter what specific job I had, no matter what the specific skill set was for that job, it all came back to communications and training. So
it's interesting that you're able to see that kind of thread throughout. I think that's helpful, for students to be able to think, how do I connect all of these experiences?
Right. And you look at my resume and it has all of these crazy things: corporate pilot, photographer, corporate executive working in healthcare for a software medical revenue cycle management company, all these crazy things. But all of that, every single one of them really is communications and training. Mm-hmm. So that in terms of my resume, in order to share it with somebody and have them not think that I'm a complete flake, I have to point that out to people as well, because with diverse experiences and job descriptions like that, a lot of people wouldn't see the combination that, is common throughout. And so you have to point it out so that you look like you are a strong candidate. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a great point, and I have tried to explain that to students as well, where we talk about, if you've got these experiences that seem unrelated, it's your job to connect them for the employer because they're not always going to do it. So I like that you have connected everything with communications and training.
Yeah. Yep.
So if things were to fall into place, how you'd like them to, what does your future maybe hold for you?
I have no idea. I don't know. In the future, honestly, my goal is to wake up every day and enjoy what I do and make sure that my family gets what they need. That my boys, if they decide that they're going to be competitive polo players and they need a horse and a horse trailer, then I'll probably work more to make more money. Mm-hmm. If they don't need that, then we make enough money doing what I do now. And so I'll probably spend more time with them than I will the money. But what I want, if everything falls into place, what I will have is the flexibility to make those decisions and alter my career path so that my life can be my focus instead of my career. That really is, what I want from my time working. I don't want to have a career be what defines me. I want everything else to be what defines me, and the career to be the thing that supports that definition. And so no matter what happens, that's my goal. I don't have a specific career goal. I have a life goal.
Okay.
So sounds like I just have a self-help book open in front of me. I'm just reading from the page.
or maybe this is you writing your self-help book as we speak.
Maybe that's the next thing I'll do, write a self-help book.
There we go. So I think we answered this, but is your career what you had pictured at graduation? Or
Absolutely not. Not a chance. Honestly, so I'm 38 now. I graduated when how old was I in 2000? I guess I was 22. Yeah, I was 22 when I graduated. So it's been 16 years, and it wasn't until 4 or 5 years ago that I really truly understood that I don't have to have the normal job. I don't have to have the 9 to 5, or when I was working as an executive, it was really a 6 to 8 or 9, it was 14, 15-hour days. I don't have to have that. And it's okay. And it takes a while to say, I don't need what society tells everybody is successful. When I see success on television, it's a black BMW and a house with a 3-car garage. I don't have to have that. And it's okay that I don't have that. And I don't have to justify that with anybody. I can do what actually makes me happy and fulfills me on a daily basis. And for everybody, that's different. For some people, that is, when I was 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be an engineer, and I went to school for engineering, and I became an engineer. Or I wanted to be an auto mechanic, and so I went to school and became an auto mechanic. And that's what I do. And that's awesome if that's who you are. That's wonderful. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with saying, I don't really care what my career is. I want my career to follow and support my life. That's okay too. So just depending on who you are, it can all be different.
Mm-hmm. So what do you wish you had known about before you graduated?
I wish that I had known that I didn't have to make a choice that would follow me through my whole life. It wasn't a choice about what I'm going to do until I die. It's what I'm going to do next. So that college degree was great. Having a degree in photography was wonderful. I have honestly not had anybody tell me you can or can't have this job because your degree is in X, or you don't have a degree in X. If I went to become a doctor, obviously it would be a bigger problem. And I could say, oh yeah, come on in, do some medicine. It'll all be good. But I wish that I had known that I would have flexibility and I would have the ability to change down the road. And sure, there are consequences, because there's always a backward, if you make a big change like I've made, every change, there's always a little bit of a backward step while you get your feet under you and start doing something new again. But it's okay to make that change. It's okay to make those kinds of decisions. So college is great, and a degree is great, and it's just where you are at that moment. And the future is totally unwritten, and you can make of it what you want.
I feel like you maybe should write a self-help book.
I don't want to, because it'd be too much work right now. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, miracles. So, yeah. Okay.
So would that be, our last question is typically, if you could give one piece of advice to NMU students, specifically graduates, we just had a graduation this past weekend. So what would your advice to those students be?
Try everything. You graduated with a degree. If you had fun and you like what you graduated with your degree in, go try it. Go see what it's like. And if you like it, awesome. If you don't like it, that's okay. If you like it for 15 years, that's perfectly cool. And then if you change your mind 15 years in, do something different. Don't be afraid to try something new. And obviously, like I said, there are always consequences. If you have a giant house and a big mortgage and, 2 brand new cars that you're paying loans on and, 12 children, that might change the flexibility that you have. But, there are always options out there, and don't be afraid to really look at and evaluate what you truly want. Don't be afraid to step away from what the social definition of success is and figure out what's really going to make you happy, and try to find that. And I don't think I don't think you're expected to actually know that when you graduate at 22 years old. You can be 22 with a degree and change your mind in the future, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, thank you very much for sharing this information with our students. I think that it's going to be very helpful for them. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I could talk for 17 hours because that's the kind of person I am. So I'll say no. I'll say that we've covered a lot, and I think you get the gist of who I am and what's worked for me. So.
All right. Well, thank you again very much, and I will share this link with you when it's up.
Wonderful. Thank you. Have a great day.